Racism is a pervasive issue that affects countries worldwide, manifesting in various forms across different societies. From systemic inequalities to social prejudices, each nation grapples with its own challenges, shaped by historical legacies and modern-day dynamics. Understanding these issues is essential to addressing the global fight against racism. Number 10. Germany. Germany has faced challenges with racism, particularly linked to immigration, ethnic diversity, and the rise of far-right nationalism. The country has seen an increase in anti-immigrant and anti-Muslim sentiment, partly driven by the large influx of refugees in recent years, particularly from the Middle East and Africa. Far-right political parties and extremist groups have gained momentum, promoting xenophobia and contributing to incidents of racially motivated violence against minorities, including Muslims, Jews, and people of African descent. While Germany has strong anti-discrimination laws and has made efforts to promote integration, these tensions continue to shape societal and political discourse in 2024. Number 9. Australia. In Australia, racism is often linked to the country's history of colonization and the ongoing impact on Indigenous Australians, who continue to face social, economic, and political disadvantages. Discrimination toward Indigenous peoples, as well as immigrants, particularly from Africa, Asia, and the Middle East, remains a significant issue. Debates around immigration policies, treatment of refugees, and racial profiling have fueled tensions. While Australia has made strides in recognizing Indigenous rights and promoting multiculturalism, these efforts are sometimes overshadowed by incidents of racism, both at the individual and institutional levels, contributing to a divided discourse on race in 2024. Number 8. Myanmar. Burma. In Myanmar, racism and ethnic tensions are deeply rooted in the country's complex history and ethnic diversity. The most prominent example is the persecution of the Rohingya Muslim minority, who have faced systematic discrimination, denial of citizenship, and violent military crackdowns, leading to accusations of ethnic cleansing and genocide. Hundreds of thousands of Rohingya have been displaced, living in dire conditions in refugee camps. Beyond the Rohingya crisis, other ethnic minorities such as the Karen, Kachin, and Shan have also experienced discrimination and conflict with the government. Despite international pressure, Myanmar's political and military leadership has done little to address these deep-seated ethnic divisions, and racism continues to be a critical issue in 2024. Number 7. France. For the first time, the French Prime Minister's office did not respond to the invitation to attend the presentation of the annual report on the fight against racism, anti-Semitism, and xenophobia by the National Consultative Commission on Human Rights, CNCDH, published on Thursday, June 27th. For over 3 decades, it had, in theory, been an unmissable event for the Prime Minister. But in the run-up to France's snap elections, to be held on June 30th and July 7th, the figures revealed in this report, based on one-on-one interviews conducted with a representative sample of 1,210 people, are alarming. The Longitudinal Tolerance Index, which measures changes in French people's prejudices each year on a scale from 0 to 100, the closer the index is to 100, the higher the level of tolerance, has dropped by 3 points in 1 year to 62. This is a significant and rare decline, highlighted political scientist Vincent Taiberge, a university professor, researcher at the Emile Durkheim Center, and a co-author of the report. Number 6. Saudi Arabia. Racism is largely centered around the treatment of migrant workers and non-Arabs, particularly those from South Asia and Africa. These workers, who make up a large portion of the labor force, often face discrimination, exploitation, and harsh living conditions under the kafala sponsorship system, which ties their residency to their employer, limiting their rights and mobility. Ethnic hierarchies exist, with Arab nationals generally receiving better treatment and privileges. Additionally, there are reports of discrimination against religious minorities, including Shia Muslims, who are treated unequally compared to the Sunni majority. While the country has been undergoing reforms in recent years, issues of systemic racism and discrimination remain prevalent in 2024. Number 4. Russia. Immigrants from Central Asia and people from the Caucasus region. Xenophobia and racially motivated violence have been reported, particularly against individuals from countries like Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and Azerbaijan, who often migrate for work. African students and migrants also face discrimination. Nationalist and far-right groups in Russia have contributed to these tensions, promoting anti-immigrant and xenophobic rhetoric. Although Russia is home to a diverse population, systemic racism and social prejudice continue to be significant issues in 2024, with occasional violent incidents and widespread societal bias against non-Slavic ethnic groups. Number 3. India. In India, racism and discrimination are closely tied to the country's complex social structure, particularly the caste system and religious divisions. Despite legal protections, caste-based discrimination, especially against Dalits, formerly untouchables, persists in many areas. Ethnic and regional prejudices also exist, particularly against people from northeastern states who often face racial stereotyping. Additionally, religious tensions between Hindus and Muslims are a major issue, with instances of communal violence and discrimination against Muslims being reported. Nationalist rhetoric and policies under the current government have further fueled these religious and ethnic divides, making racism and discrimination prominent social concerns in India in 2024. Number 2. South Africa. In South Africa, racism remains a significant issue, deeply rooted in the country's history of apartheid, which enforced racial segregation and entrenched economic and social inequalities between black, white, and colored populations. Although apartheid officially ended in 1994, its legacy continues to shape South African society. Economic disparities remain stark, with the majority of wealth and resources still concentrated among the white minority, while the black majority faces high levels of poverty and unemployment. Racial tensions persist in areas such as land ownership, employment, and access to services. Efforts to address these inequalities, such as land reform policies, have sparked debates, sometimes exacerbating racial divides. In 2024, South Africa continues to grapple with the long-term impacts of systemic racism and efforts to promote reconciliation and equity. 1. United States. In the United States, racism is a deeply rooted issue, shaped by the country's history of slavery, segregation, and systemic inequality. Despite progress in civil rights, racial disparities persist, particularly affecting Black, Latino, and indigenous communities. Issues like police brutality, mass incarceration, and economic inequality disproportionately impact people of color. The Black Lives Matter movement, which gained prominence in response to incidents of police violence, continues to advocate for racial justice. Immigration policies and anti-Asian hate crimes have also brought attention to racism in other communities. While there have been efforts to address these inequalities through reforms and activism, the U.S. in 2024 continues to face significant challenges related to systemic racism and deeply polarized racial tensions. Racism remains a global challenge shaped by history, politics, and social inequalities. While progress is being made, every country faces unique struggles. Continued efforts in education, policy reform, and social awareness are essential to building a more just and inclusive world for all.